Hello and welcome back to Emma's from Meeple. I'm Morgan.
And I'm Mitch, and today we're going to talk about our top 10 board games we like to play as a couple.
So now we're going to talk about our top 10 board games that we like to play as a couple. And these are in no particular order. We just wanted to showcase some of the games that we like to play as a couple. So if any of these games interest you, be sure to check out your friendly local gaming store for any of them.
Yeah.
All right, Mitch, you want to go first?
Yeah, let's get it started with RADLANDS. RADLANDS, which is a lane dueling game that takes place in a post-apocalypse setting, which you're spending your water resource to put out punks and soldiers into the lanes to defeat your opponent's camps.
So the reason why water is your resource in this game is because it's a
post-apocalypse, so water is scarce, and
right.
you're giving the soldiers water in order for them to go out on the field.
And perform actions. Yeah, it's thematically it makes sense. Right. And the water tiles are like these big chunky tiles. So good. This is the deluxe version of the game, though. So it does come with the neoprene mats. That's all it comes with, right? Just the neoprene mats?
Neoprene mats and this nice box art that it has. That's it. It's just neoprene mats. What more do you need?
But you can get a smaller version of this that is just the cards. You don't need the deluxe version or the mats, but they do help, I feel like, keep track of your event placement, where to put your water. I feel like it does make it a little bit easier in terms of setup and where things go.
Yeah, for a first-time play, the map definitely helps you visualize where everything should go on the map or on the board.
Right, but it's definitely not needed to play the game.
So there's one deck in it, so players are sharing the same cards to where it's the same like 80 card deck every time you play, but you might not get the cards that you're familiar with. And the three camps that you start off with in the game change every game. I think there's 20 different camp cards.
That was really cool. Like the couple times that we've played it, like I think one of my camps the one time was the Juggernaut, right? Mm-hmm. It was fantastic. It was all strength, no defense. Its ability was it just keeps moving up on the track in order to destroy like the frontline people in the other camp.
Yeah. So let me backtrack a little bit. You have three camps, and your opponent has three camps. So in each camp, there's a lane going to the other one, and you're putting your troops in front of each camp to protect yours while simultaneously trying to attack your opponent's camps. And if they are unguarded, meaning there's not a card or a punk in front of it, it's exposed and you can attack that camp and damage it and then destroy it. And the goal of the game is to destroy all three camps.
But the artwork in this game is beautiful. The colors are really gorgeous on the cards and the artwork. It's like a Mad Max card dueling game. It's fantastic for two players.
A pretty Mad Max. And if you like burning your significant other down, this one's for you.
Yeah, definitely take that for sure.
Mm-hmm. And that's RADLANDS.
That's RADLANDS.
Okay.
The next game on our list, number 9, is Set a Watch by Rock Manor Games. We have both versions. We have the original Set a Watch, and then we have the sequel that just fulfilled its Kickstarter, Set a Watch Swords of the Coin. They're essentially the same game. Swords of the Coin does add a market that you can play with, and they each have different classes that you can play. But this game is really cool. If anyone is familiar with like Dungeons and Dragons or play any like RPGs, whenever you in those games would go to rest at a camp, you always have to like roll an encounter to see if something bad happens while you're resting. And that's essentially the idea behind this game. You are a group of adventurers. You have got to a camp and you are resting. You have to choose one player to rest at the camp. There's different rest actions they can perform, like chop firewood, check the map, scout ahead, swap out their equipment, heal, while the other players are taking a watch, thus the name Set a Watch. So they are setting a watch. And so they're waiting for any enemies to come up and attack them. So there is a camp phase, and then there's a watch phase. So like I said, during the camp phase, one player is, just performing camp actions, firewood, scanning ahead, checking the map, doing all sorts of things. And then it goes into the watch phase, where all the other players will defend against waves of enemies. It's really cool the way that this game works because the waves of enemies will come in like a line, and depending on the strength of your fire, so if you have a fire that's at a certain level, you might get to see 3 enemies in that line, which means the 3 cards in the line closest to you will get revealed. So you're always seeing 3 cards in the line, but all the other ones are face down. But certain things can make your fire die down, which means your adventurers can't see very well, which limits the amount of monsters that you can see coming to attack you. So it's interesting because you have to kind of plan ahead based on your fire strength and your combined character abilities, how you want to defeat the monsters. It is a cooperative game, which is really cool. And a 2-player, each person controls 2 characters, right? Isn't that how that works? 2 characters for...
There's always 4 characters in the game, so no matter how many players you have, you're always going to have 4 characters being controlled. Mm-hmm. So in a 2-player game, each person assumes the role of 2 characters. And there's solo variant that you can control all 4, or you can play it at 4-player, which each person will control 1. But, that gets me to the point where that's the reason why I like it at 2, because when you have one of your characters take the rest at the camp, you have another character you're controlling, which is contributing to the watch phase.
Right, so you essentially get to play both phases when you're playing at 2 players, which is really nice.
Exactly. That's why I like this game at 2 players.
Another thing that's really cool is there's a bunch of different classes to choose from. You have your ranged characters and your melee characters. So the ranged characters can always attack enemies 2 cards away, and melee characters can only attack cards in the first position. So it's interesting because the different characters can like swap the positions of the cards or do different things. So you really have to work together to figure out how best to defeat the enemies in the time that you have. And it does get progressively harder because you are adding stronger cards into the mix, accolade cards. And any monsters that you don't defeat get added to a horde deck, which you have to fight at the end of the game. So if you exhaust all of your abilities and you can't defeat the enemies at the line, you're going to be fighting those same monsters at the end of the game. So it's really interesting, and you really do have to work together and utilize the abilities the best way that you can in order to defeat the monsters. And it's just a really, really cool game. We had a lot of fun with it. We do really like the merchant that they added in Swords of the Coin, because that adds unique items that your adventurers can equip, and they can do additional things. And the characters are interchangeable. You can play the first one with characters from the second one, or the second one with characters from the first one. Each character has their own dice that they're rolling too, which is really cool. And you use dice to activate your abilities, or you can just use them as straight damage. But yeah, we really, really like this game. It's at a watch.
It's at a watch. All right, so the next game we're going to talk about is not strictly a 2-player game, but we like playing it at 2 players. And it's brought to you by Rather Dashing Games, and that is Alder, the High Sage. Now this takes place in the same universe as Element, another board game that we've covered, and it has the 4 elements: air, wind, water, and fire. And on this, you and your opponents are playing tile cards down that have 1 or 2 element symbols. And you are trying to make specific patterns to get your sages onto the board, and you will follow the rules of replacement to where fire will cover air, air will erode the mountains will overtake the sea, and the sea will put out fire. So you're laying the cards on top of each other, one over the other, and it's very tricky and puzzly because you might be going for one pattern and your opponent might be going for another, to where at the same time you're also drafting from a pile of 3 or 4 cards depending on your player count, to where you might not be getting the cards that you need in order to complete the patterns that you need, but your opponent is, and they're just constantly blocking you off, and it's super frustrating.
Well, there's also a piece you didn't mention. So Alder is a sage at the end of your turn. So once you've placed your allotted 2, you can always place 2 tiles on your turn, or cards on your turn. And once you've placed your 2 cards, you are allowed. Well, you have to move Alder.
Yeah.
And you can put Alder on any space except for wild or blank spaces. And you essentially move Alder to. Well, you want to move Alder to block the other player. So if you set yourself up to make, a fire pattern on your next turn, you can place Alder right in the middle of that fire pattern. And what that means is the next player can't place any cards that Alder is on, can't overlap the cards that he's on. So you can definitely do it to kind of block off your players from taking advantage of the
right.
cards that you've laid down, which is really cool.
Right, because you have your own personal board, and so does your opponent, that shows the 4 sages that they need to get out, and they'll be sitting on the pattern that they need to do. For fire, it's a T. Water is a zigzag.
Mountain is a square.
Mountain is a square, and wind is a straight line. So everyone's trying to make those same patterns to where it's if Morgan is making the straight line pattern, she can put the Alder Sage on it to block it off, so that way I can't use that straight line pattern on my turn, and vice versa. So it gets pretty tricky, and I haven't played it at a higher player count, but you did.
I have, yeah. I think in a higher player count, it's not terrible. I think it's just a lot harder to, if you don't have the right cards, it's really hard to, set them up, because it just feels like you're setting up the next player, right? Or the player after that player. So we played it at 3, and it's after my turn, so say I need to get water, and I've, set myself up to score water, and I've placed Alder on it to block, the water that I've just set up. So that blocks it for the player after me, but then the player after them, that third player, essentially could just take the water that I've set up, and that can be really frustrating. And then when it gets back to your turn, you're back to square 0, and you're trying to, start from scratch again. Okay, well, now how am I going to get water based on what's on the board now? Whereas at 2-player, it's a little bit better, because there's more of that take that, I set up this water, but now you can't have it, and then they set up something, and you can kind of mess with each other a little bit more, and I feel like it just plays so much better at 2.
I'm not good at this game.
I really like Alder. It's really fun trying to think ahead, okay, there's mountains, but I need to get, water. I can erode the mountains and place my water tiles here, and it's so much fun.
It's good. It's a very good game.
And that's Alder.
And that's Alder.
Okay, the next game on our list is Attack a Beautiful Game by James Ernest and Patrick Rothfuss. This game was a made-up game for the book A Wise Man's Fear, which is part of the King Killer Chronicles, written by Patrick Rothfuss. I introduced the first book in the series, Name of the Wind, which is one of my favorite books of all time, to Mitch. And as we were reading the series, I had discovered that Patrick Rothfuss and James Ernest had actually turned the game of Tack, which is a chess-like game they play in the second book, A Wise Man's Fear, into an actual board game.
Which is crazy, because in the book, the way they describe the game being played, they do talk about roads and capital stones and standing walls, but I feel like I didn't get the sense of how it was portrayed in the book until actually getting it out, and I feel like it's pulled straight from the pages to where, now that I've had my hands on it, I can visualize that scene and how it went down. And the game can easily go from your opponent easily won in 5 minutes to where, this game took us a half hour.
Right, you can use all the pieces and then essentially have a draw where nobody wins.
Well, then it goes down to the scoring. Who has
true.
The most face-up control of who has the most flat stones.
Right, that's fair.
Yeah.
This game is really, really fun. I would like to get a nice version of this game just to keep on our coffee table, because they make beautiful tack boards.
Etsy.
Yeah. Anyways, the goal of this game is to be the first person to complete a road with your pieces from one end of the board to the other.
So yeah, you're trying to connect your road from one end of the board to the other, and
Walls.
it doesn't matter which way. They're called standing stones.
Standing stones.
Standing stones. You can either play the stone flat down to be part of your road, or you can stand it. You can place it standing up, a standing stone, to make a wall and block the road off. But it blocks off your opponent's roads and your own roads.
Because standing stones, they don't count towards anybody's roads. So you could see that your opponent is setting up, they have 3 flat stones and they're close to winning. You can just be like, nope, put a standing stone in front of them and block that road. Like, nope, now there's a wall and they have to go around it. But players also have 1 capital stone each.
Capstone piece, yeah.
Capstone piece. And those can knock down walls if they're adjacent to them, right? If you move them. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, when capstone pieces have to move by themselves, because you can move whole stacks.
Right,
but if you move a capstone by itself, it can knock down a wall and go on top of it.
Mm-hmm. But, the movement in this game is really cool because you're, you can move 1 space, and then if there's another space on there, you can pick it up and then, essentially, drag them all out. If there's another stone. Yeah, it's just fantastic, and we really, really like this game.
My mom really liked playing it, too. It's such a good abstract strategy game.
If you like chess, this game is right up there with chess, but I think we prefer...
Even if you don't like chess, this could be the abstract strategy game for you. I think chess is just okay, but this is way better.
Right, and then there's different sides of the boards too. So if you want to play with a bigger board, you flip it over, and then you can even use the dots instead of the squares.
Right, you can either play a 3x3 grid, which is a very short game,
or a 5x5
5x5, or the large game, which is a 6x6. But we found that 5x5 plays the best, quickest, and you can get the most rounds in.
So if you have read the Kingkiller Chronicles and you don't know that TAC is a game, it is a game, and it's beautiful.
It's ugly, but I love it.
I like to say beautiful because it's TAC, a beautiful game, Mitch.
Yeah, TAC, a beautiful game. Even though you put a beautiful game on the box, it's ugly, and I love it. It's definitely a quick coffee table game. Mm-hmm. It's fantastic. It's one of our first board games we had in our collection.
Mm-hmm. That's TAC. Beautiful game.
That's TAC, baby. Now we're going to talk about Air, Land, and Sea, Critters at War by Arcane Wonders and designed by John Perry. In this game, players are competing to have control over 3 different theaters, an air, land, and sea theater, in which players are playing cards down to score points in said theaters. And each card has certain abilities that can flip over your opponent's cards to make them 2 points, or flip a 2-point card over to reveal its true face, which could be anything from 1 through 6. So it can be good or bad, depending on how you play it. Surprisingly, I didn't win when we played this game, which is shocking to me.
So if you win is it a round?
So the goal of the game is to score 12 victory points. But the thing is, at any time, you or your opponent can withdraw from the battle to allow your opponent to score victory points. And depending on how many cards are in your hand, if you have more cards in your hand, that's less points your opponent scores. So if you know you're not going to win that battle over...
You can retreat.
Right, because you have to win 2 theaters out of the 3 in order to win the battle and get the points. So if you know you're not winning 2, retreat early, your opponent only gets 2 or 3 points, but it's the first of 12. So sometimes you don't have a choice to retreat. Like, you had 10 points, and I just had to keep on going.
And the first and second player changes that slightly, too, because the first player, if you withdraw... when you have...
Right, there's a little bit of a
skewing system.
Right.
Yeah.
To where the first player gets less points, I believe, but they win ties. Mm-hmm.
This game is also a reskin of the same exact game.
The standard
just
Land,
called
Air, and Sea.
Air, Land, and Sea.
But it's got cute little critters on it.
Yeah, I feel like this one's more accessible. The artwork on the other one was just kind of your standard military artwork, which might appeal to some people, but this one I feel like appeals to a wider audience.
Right.
We always say don't judge a board game by its cover, but let's be honest, we all judge board games by their covers. So this one, I feel like, was just being reskinned. I feel like it's introduced a lot more people to this game. It's a great little game. I just feel like the previous design a lot of people passed it by.
It didn't make it look appealing to certain people. I would have liked either version of it, but if
I would have passed on the other version.
If having cute critters on it gets you to play this kind of strategy game, then absolutely put unicorns and butterflies on it. I'll play it.
Right. But yeah, it's just a really fun little 2-player game, kind of head-to-head. And we really like it. And that's Critters at War, or if you prefer military style, Air, Land, and Sea. Okay, the next game on our list is Cascadia from AEG and Flat Out Games, designed by Randy Flynn and illustrated by Beth Sobel. This is a gorgeous little tile-laying game where you are drafting different habitat tiles and then drafting different animals that will go on those habitats. The animals score differently. Salmon need to be in a squiggly line. Elks need to be in a straight line. One really cool thing about this game is there's so many different ways the animals can score. There's A through D, I believe. So every time you play, you can always pick a different scoring card, however you want the animals to score. But basically, you are connecting your tiles in this little hexagon-like grid, and you ideally would like to connect your habitats together. So you want to make sure that your water is touching, your grassland is touching, your forest is touching, because that's going to score you extra points at the end. But you also want to line it up so that you can place your animals in a certain position in order to score their points. So each habitat tile will have different animal symbols on them. They will either have one animal or a combination of animals. And that tells you which animal tile you're allowed to place on there. So if I'm trying to connect my water habitats together, but I'm also trying to score my bears, ideally I would want to have my water tiles that have bears in them. So it's just really cool.
Yeah, the different cards can score differently to where it's like you said, salmon could be in straight line, but that's on the A. But if you get the B salmon, it needs to be a school of salmon, so they all need to be grouped together.
So when you're drafting your tiles, you have to take the ones that are across from each other. So you have to take the habitat tile and the animal token that is in a line. But it's just a really, really fun game. It doesn't necessarily play best at it too.
Yeah, it's a 1 to 4 player game. So there is a solo variant, and you play with 4 players.
This game plays 1 to 4, and while we really enjoy playing at 2 players, I feel like the game doesn't necessarily change that much when you add a 3rd and 4th player in, because you allot more tiles for the amount of players that you're playing with. So you always have 20 tiles per player plus 3.
Oh, so you're always getting the same amount of tiles.
Yeah, you're always getting the same amount of tiles. So I feel like there's really no difference between playing it at 2 players versus playing it at 3 or 4 players. But we really enjoy playing it at 2. It's just a great little tile-laying game. The artwork is gorgeous. There's so much strategy in this game. It's really hard to figure out how many points your opponent has versus how many you have.
That part was difficult.
And
you're
constantly trying to be like, okay, he's got a lot of forest over there. Because at the end of the game, whoever has the largest in one habitat gets those points for it. So you're trying to always make sure that you are, getting points in all of the different habitats. But you're also trying to score the animal, so it's like a dual layered strategy, and it's awesome. Mm-hmm. It's really, really fun. It's simple, but complex at the same time. And that's Cascadia.
That's Cascadia. Now I want to talk about Land vs. Sea from Good Games Publishing. Now this isn't strictly a 2-player game, but I find that it does play best at 2 players because there's only 2 teams. There's the land team and the sea team, and all you're trying to do is complete continents or river or bodies of water in order to score points, and you just score points based on how many tiles there are that complete that land or complete that body of water. And there are different ways of scoring. There's the bonus points with pluses and minuses, and
coral and caravans.
Yeah, coral and caravan. No, it's coral. It's caravans and ships. Yeah, coral and mountain ranges. Mm-hmm. And then there's the bonus points to where there's white X's and black X's, and those will score bonus points for whoever completes the body of water or the continent. And you are drafting from 2 piles of tiles, and the tiles are double-sided, so your opponent's not seeing the underside, only you are. To where I really like this game. It's very thinky and puzzly, and there was way more analysis paralysis than I thought in this game. There's so many different bodies of water and so many different pieces of land that you can try and complete. It's definitely easier to try and complete smaller pieces and sections, but your opponent can come back like from nowhere.
Yeah, when we first played, I was C, and like I was just trying to have this. I'm just used to sea being like oceans, right? So I was just trying to have this big, huge body of water, and then I forgot that you needed to actually surround your water in order to score points. So then the whole game I was just trying to surround this massive body of water that I had created. And then I didn't have any points for the longest time, and then I scored, 40 points when I finally closed off my sea.
It was like 20 points for the tiles, and then the bonus points in there was like 18 or 19 or something, to where it was really close to 40 points, to where she shot up way past me, and I was just playing catch-up the whole game. But it's crazy how much of a comeback a player can have, to where I feel like it's very well balanced in that aspect, to where you're always trying to use your opponent's geograph, either their sea or their land, to like landlock your body of water,
or sea lock,
to where you're or sea lock. Yeah, to where you're always setting your opponent up while you're scoring your own points, to where I feel like it's very well balanced. But
there's also special tiles, like some tiles will have a compass on them, which will let you take 2 actions on your turn instead of 1.
Right, so where
like
you
place
play
2 tiles instead of 1 tile. And then there is also like a dual symbol, which will let you steal your opponent's tile and leave them with only 1 option. But yeah, there's a lot of different strategy because the tiles are double-sided. When you draft, you essentially have 4 different tiles that you can play with.
Because they're double-sided.
Yeah, because they're double-sided. You have 4 different options that you can place. So you're constantly trying to be like, oh, I don't know if I can fit this piece here. Maybe if I flip it over. Will that close it off? No, because it doesn't match the one side.
Right. And you can close off your opponent's area in order to score the bonus points instead of them, but they'll still score points for having an enclosed sea or land.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's very well balanced. I would like to get it to the table more.
Yeah.
Land versus sea. Number whatever. Because we're not numbering them. It's just top 10 in no particular order.
Land versus sea.
Yeah.
Alright, the next game on our list is Carcassonne, specifically Hunters and Gatherers. This game is published by Z-Man Games, and I apologize, I'm going to butcher this. Designed by Klaus-Jürgen Word, Bernard Brunhofer, and illustrated by Marcel Gruber. Alright, this is Carcassonne, Hunters and Gatherers. Full disclaimer, we have not played the original Carcassonne.
No need to, because this looks better.
Yeah, I just kept hearing people in the community talk about Carcassonne and how great of a game it was, but I always tend to judge like games by their cover, and I just didn't think that the original Carcassonne like looked nice. I had no desire to play it. I didn't understand the hype. But we found this one at our friendly local gaming store Recess over the weekend, and this theme just, I feel like, appeals to me more than I feel like the original Carcassonne. The artwork seems really pretty. I like the different mechanics that you're doing in this version. So we picked this up and we played it, and it is fantastic. We love this game. We even played it on BGA.
I've been playing a lot of this on BGA.
While we were both working. It was great. But yeah, this is Carcassonne Hunters and Gatherers. So you are laying tiles in order to connect different rivers, forests, hunting grounds, in order to score different points. You can, on your turn, when you place a tile, you can choose to also place one of your, what are they called, villagers? So on your turn, when you place a tile, you can then choose to place your meeple as a hunter by placing it in the grassland, as a gatherer, placing it in the forest, or as a fisherman by placing it on the waterway, the river. If you place it as a fisherman, then when you connect a lake, however way down that river there's a lake, your fisherman will then score all of the fish that's in that river and net you those points. And once that fisherman has scored, you get that meeple back into your pool to place again. If you place it as a gatherer, you place it in the forest section, and then that meeple stays there until you finish off that section of forest. So as soon as you finish off that section of forest, your gatherer will score 2 points for every forest that is in that completed forest section. And if there is a rock in that forest, I think it's called something else that's special.
Citadel or something.
Yeah, but if there's like a rock structure in the forest, you get to then place a special tile, which will be an extra tile that you get to place. It'll have different artwork on it that will do extra things. Like it might be a trap card that you can place in the grasslands, which will let you capture more animals. It could be, like a dock that gets placed in the river that will score additional bonus points for every lake that you have. There's a bunch of different bonus tiles that you can do. And then if you place your meeple in the grassland as a hunter, that meeple will stay there until the end of the game, and then it will score points for all of the animals that's in that connected grassland. But in that grassland, if you have a saber-toothed tiger and a deer,
Saber-toothed eat the deer, so the
those
deers
will
won't
cancel
score.
out. Yeah, so you'll get minus those points. You can kind of mess with your opponent by placing saber-tooths in there.
Right, after they've placed the hunter down in a grassland, you can start connecting saber-tooths into that grassland, so that way their deer will score less points.
Mm-hmm.
And the stones are called monoliths. Monoliths. That makes sense, not citadels.
Another thing you can do with water tiles, you can also choose to place your hut down, which will net you control of the entire river system at the end of the game. One of the really cool things about this game, and I think why we like it so much, is that if you have a fisherman on a river or a hut on a river, or if you have a meeple in a specific location, you cannot place another meeple in that same location if it's controlled by the other person's meeple. However,
you can sneak
them in, and it's fantastic.
Just say you have two river systems that are about to meet. If there's a meeple on one river system and a meeple on the other, and then you put that 90-degree piece in to where the two of them connect,
boom!
Now people have tied for control over that river system.
Those points are shared.
Both people score the amount of points.
Mm-hmm. Unless somebody can sneak in another one of their meeples or huts to gain control again. So you're constantly doing this like tug of war of trying to gain control over the forest, grasslands, and rivers to try to be the one to score the most points at the end. And it's so much fun.
It is. I want to play this
all the time.
After we're done.
I just want to play this all the time, and I totally get the hype of Carcassonne.
And it's not strictly 2 players. It can play up to 5, but I think I wouldn't like playing it at higher player counts because you're always playing until all the tiles are gone. So I like being able to I'm putting down 40 and you're putting down 40.
Right, the amount of tiles
to where
you would put down less tiles if you play with more people.
You're playing with more people. You're only putting down maybe 10, 15 tiles.
And I feel like the control would get so tricky with 5 people. I mean, we should try it, but I feel like right now, I just really enjoy that tug of war that 2-player gives you with this game.
Undefeated?
Yes.
Undefeated?
Yes.
Undefeated.
The first time you only beat me by 2 points. It was very close.
Win's a win.
Yeah,
Win's a win. Whatever. Got the gold medal twice.
Whatever. But that's Carcassonne, Hunters, and Gatherers.
Now the next game I want to talk about is a cooperative board game experience. And that is Micro Macro Crime City. And here we have Micro Macro Crime City Full House because we already gifted our copy of Micro Macro Crime City because we completed it. It's
as fast as we could.
It's not necessarily a one and done, but once you go through all the cases, the most you can do after that is look at the little Easter eggs on the map. And this is a Where's Waldo-esque type of a game to where you and whoever else is playing with you, up to 4 people, but we found that it plays best at 2 because you're huddled over the map trying to look in as to what bag did the ice cream man have in his hand,
right? And it
where
says
was
that
he going?
You can have people all around the table, but you cannot see if you are looking at this map from upside down. It is so hard to follow people.
If you're good at, that type of thing, but I feel like we aren't.
This is the perfect couple game. Micro Macro Crime City. It is so much fun. Each case takes maybe 5 to 10 minutes to solve.
Well, it ramps up.
It
Some of the
does,
5-star ones took us about 20-25 minutes to figure out.
But it's like, once you finish it, you're like, oh my god, let's do another one. Let's solve another case. That was so much fun. Like, it's just such an awesome experience. And you're, like, huddled close together as you're, like, trying to follow these, what happened in the story, and it's great.
It's fantastic. So it's like when you're following them, the map isn't a still image throughout time. It shows a progression of time to where it's like you'll see them walking out of a store, and then just 2 inches over, you'll see them like turning down an alley, and then 2 inches from that, you'll see someone followed them down the alley, and then like 4 inches past that, you see that they had got onto the subway and went to the graveyard and.
Right, so you're following these people, like, throughout their day. Like, you start with the body for most of these cases, and then it'll be like, oh, do you see anything suspicious? And you might see, like, footprints, and then you're like, where did the footprints go?
Yeah.
And then that'll lead you to, like, a person, and then it's like, what did they do throughout their day? Did they have any motives? And then you're like, they talked to this old lady on the corner. Where did the old lady go? Does she know anybody? And it's awesome.
It's awesome. And often in the harder cases, you're almost getting a starting point. The first card that you're given, because it gives you prompts to help you solve the cases. For the harder cases, it's almost like you're jumping into the middle of a story to where there's 2 different ways you can go about it. You can follow the person forward through time and look where they went after, like, a murder or whatnot, to see what they did with evidence or the weapon.
Or what they
you can
did
follow
before
them
the murder.
and see how it led up to the events. To where it's just fantastic, and even on the lid of the box, it's got a little adventure.
Who killed the burger?
Who killed the ice cream vendor?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the burger.
The burger was the first one.
The burger was the first one. Full House is the sequel to the first game,
and it's a completely different map.
Yeah,
which is I'm so excited for.
16 unique cases, and it's just an all around.
It's an experience, and
it's not so much a board game, but it's a board game like experience.
Yeah, it's this just gigantic map that you're huddled over trying to track down these criminals, and it's a good time. It's
definitely not for a young audience, as there are people getting it on in bushes.
Very graphic, a lot of violence. Micro Macro Crime City and Micro Macro Crime City Full House. Okay, the last game we're going to talk about today is Azul, published by Next Move Games. Designed by Michael Kiesling and illustrated by Chris Quilliams. Azul is another tile laying game. Right? Tile laying game?
Yeah, it's like domino tiles. They're
chonky tiles. They feel so nice in your hand.
Yeah.
There's like a drafting element where you are essentially trying to build a tile wall.
Portuguese tile wall.
And you need to have specific colored tiles in specific spots on your wall in order to score points at the end.
Yeah, so it's like you're drafting tiles from the factory, and depending on how many players you have, there's more factories, and you're taking all the tiles of the same color from that said factory and putting it onto your board. And at the top of your tile wall, you only need 1 tile in order to move it into the wall. And then the second row, you need 2. Third row 3, fourth row 4, and fifth row 5.
There's only 1 color of each type in every row in your wall. So each turn you're trying to move the color tiles over. But you need to get matching tiles in order to be able to move 1 color of that tile over.
Right. So in order to match the that 5th row, you have to get all 5 matching tiles at the bottom.
In order to move that 1 over. So it does get progressively harder for that bottom row. But then you're scoring points based on adjacency. If you have a completed row or if tiles are touching each other, you get to score more points at the end of the round. This game is really fun. There can be a little bit of hate drafting in this game.
Oh my god.
Like if you're like, oh, I see, you're trying to put that called the yellow tile in your bottom row. And you have 3 yellows, but I see there's only 2 yellows left. I'm going to take those 2 yellows before you can so that you can't complete that 5th row.
Yeah, Mom, if you're watching, you're the biggest hate drafter I've ever played with.
That was the first time she played.
First time she ever played. She looked at my board, she's like, oh, you put your blues in the 4th row and there's only 2 blues remaining and you need 2? I'm going to take the blues. Who does that? My mom. My mom does that. Why?
Tell you.
She
part
won.
of the game. It's part of the game.
I'm not good at Azul. I love Azul. I never won.
What do you mean you're not? You always win when we play Azul. Yes, you do.
No, you won. I think we're even on Azul.
Yeah,
my mom beat me every time.
definitely beat me in Azul multiple times.
I don't know. It feels like I lose Azul.
This game's great. The tiles are chunky, so they won't blow away in the wind. You could even probably play this on a beach.
I would not play any board game on a beach.
If you have a towel, like, you're not going to play it in the sand, but if you have, like, a towel set up, you can easily play Azul.
You're going to get sand in the box. Heavy wind blows.
You could just take the bag. They come in their own bag. You don't even need to take the box.
I wouldn't play
any
game on a beach.
You don't want to take Azul to the beach when we go on vacation?
I will play it at the beach house. I won't play it on the beach.
This would be the perfect game to, like, play under an umbrella, sitting on a beach. Azul. It's fantastic. It's great.
And it's got several different versions.
It does. We only have the original, and we've only played the original.
And we got to get the beach version now.
I don't think there's there's, like, Summer Pavilion.
That's the one. That's the one we'll take to the beach. Summer Pavilion.
I would like to try the other Azuls, but I think I would like to try them on BGA before we decide what other version that we like.
Yeah.
But this is Azul. It's great. Okay, so that was our top 10 games that we like to play as a couple. If you're interested in any of the games that we talked about today or want to pick up a game to play with your significant other, be sure to check out your friendly local gaming store to see if they have any of these in stock. If you're in the Northeast Ohio area, make sure to check out Recess in North Olmsted, Ohio.
It's where we get 90% of our games.
We're there, I swear to God. Every week we're at Recess.
We'll link them down in the description below.
Mm-hmm. So thank you so much for watching. I'm Morgan.
I'm Mitch.
And if you liked what you saw here today, make sure to like and subscribe. And we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye. Tableau building is where each player has a visible personal array or tableau of components, cards, tiles, or player boards.
And now you know.